In the Middle Ages, sweetness wasn't dessert. It was a symbol of power, a medicine, and a luxury for a precious few. While millions lived on grain and sour ale, something strange was happening behind castle walls. Monks controlled the honey, while aristocrats built entire castles out of sugar, not to eat, but to impress. Today, we'll discover why apples were considered dangerous, how the Crusades hooked Europe on sugar, and why feasts featured dishes that were literally dangerous to your health. But before we reach the royal extravagance, we need to descend into a buzzing hell, the only source of endorphins for millions of people. God's creatures, who controlled sweetness. This buzzing hell was the apiary, guarded more fiercely in the Middle Ages than armories full of swords, because the bee was considered a creature of God, producing both light and sweetness. Before colonial sugar arrived, honey had no competition. Its harvest took two forms: domestic beekeeping and wild honey hunting, a dangerous trade where hunters plundered the nests of forest bees 20 meters up. In England and Germany, honey was so highly valued you could pay fines and taxes with it. But the true sugar kings were the monasteries. The church required vast amounts of wax for candles, and the byproduct, honey, went to support the monks. It was in monasteries that the famous Lebkuchen, German honey cakes, were first created. But not the soft biscuits we know today. The medieval gingerbread was as hard as brick, made from rye flour, honey, and an incredible amount of spices. It was baked in carved wooden molds bearing the faces of saints. This wasn't just a dessert, it was a sacred object. By eating it, the parishioner believed they were absorbing a piece of divine grace. Furthermore, honey was the primary preservative. Nuts and roots were sealed in it, transforming them into something like modern candied fruit. However, honey had a distinct taste and aroma that revealed its wild origins, a fact that didn't sit well with the ambitious nobility. And we'll return to that. For centuries, honey had no rival, until men in bloodied armor returned from the East, carrying something that would forever rewire the European brain. How the Crusades made Europe crave sugar. Those men in armor were the Crusaders. During the sieges of Middle Eastern cities, they discovered locals chewing on strange stalks that delivered an instant surge of energy. Before the 11th century, sugar in Europe was little more than a half-forgotten myth. While Arab Spain was already boiling sugar syrup, the rest of Europe knew it only from the dusty writings of Pliny the Elder. Everything changed when the Knights encountered organized sugar production in the Levant. The chronicler Albert of Aachen described soldiers staving off hunger by chewing on sugarcane, which he called the healthiest food on earth. For a man whose diet consisted of stale fat and sour wine, sugar was a gastronomic revelation. Returning home, the veterans created a market for this white gold. It flowed into Europe through Venetian merchants, but its price was exorbitant. In the 13th century, a pound of sugar cost as much as 35 pounds of wheat. It was given as a gift to kings and bequeathed in wills like precious property. Because of the cost, sugar initially went not to the kitchen but to the pharmacy. Medieval physicians, relying on humoral theory, considered sugar the ideal hot and moist substance capable of curing fever, coughs, and even depression. Arabic influence brought not only the product to Europe, but also the culture. Recipes for clear hard candies and thick sherbets. Sugar was sold as solid sugar loaves. They had to be chipped apart with special pincers, and every last crumb was carefully saved. It was worth its weight in silver. Sugar became the ultimate status symbol, but behind its gleaming whiteness lay a shadow, one that would soon turn paradise islands into hellish plantations. The true cost of sugar. Behind the gleaming whiteness of the sugar loaves lay a complex, brutal economic logic that turned man into an appendage of the agricultural machine. Sugar didn't create slavery, but it radically changed its character. Before the cane fields appeared in the Mediterranean, forced labor was scattered. But sugar demanded a concentration of force that the feudal system couldn't provide. In the 12th century, Cyprus and Sicily saw the rise of a proto-industrial model. Vast areas were planted with a single crop that required immediate processing. The cane had to be crushed and boiled within 24 hours of cutting, or the juice would ferment. This rigid cycle turned the plantation into an open-air factory. But why? Watch to the end, and you'll see how, for a 5-minute political spectacle at a royal feast, sugar masters literally burned through the lives of entire generations. When Columbus brought sugarcane to the Caribbean on his second voyage, he wasn't just carrying a plant, he was bringing the blueprint for centuries of colonial exploitation. Every sweet grain on the Duke's table was paid for with the lives of people working under the scorching sun. Sugar became humanity's first oil. Wars were declared to control its production, and trade routes were paved over corpses. It was a dog bargain. Europe got its desserts at the cost of millions of people's freedom on the other side of the world. But the paradox is that those who paid for this luxury with their lives never tasted it, while the European elites slowly poisoned themselves with sugar right at the dinner table. Why rotten teeth became a status symbol. Forget veneers. In the 14th century, rotten black teeth were the ultimate sign of obscene wealth and that you could afford the sweet life. When sugar moved from apothecaries to banquet tables, an era of culinary absurdity began. The Middle Ages had no strict divide between sweet and savory. Sugar was used as a spice, just like pepper and salt. The height of luxury was meat heavily dusted with powdered sugar. Imagine roast pork drenched in thick cinnamon syrup. It wasn't so much about taste as it was about status. Guests had to see that the host was wealthy enough to literally waste precious powder on meat. This obsession led to a strange trend. Constant sugar consumption destroyed tooth enamel. Queen Elizabeth I, a fanatic for sweets, had teeth blackened by decay. Sugar became a marker of civilization, separating the noble class from the crude peasants. But dusting food with sugar soon got boring, so royal chefs began building things only today's 3D printers can make. Edible castles and sugar propaganda. The sugar castles displayed on tables were called entremets. Their main purpose wasn't to feed, but to humiliate enemies and impress allies. By the 15th century, dessert had become a theatrical performance. Chefs crafted incredible sculptures from sugar paste and marzipan. We discussed this in more detail in the video on the secret of the almond. At coronation feasts, they presented entire fortresses with bastions, miniature jousting tournaments, and even hunting scenes where sugar hounds chased a sugar stag. Sometimes live birds were hidden inside these sculptures, flying out when the structure was smashed. This was pure propaganda. If a king could afford to destroy and eat a castle made of sugar, his treasury must be bottomless. Marzipan became the Play-Doh of the Middle Ages. They molded fake dishes from it. During Lent, when meat was forbidden, chefs created marzipan hams and game birds that looked real but were technically Lenten desserts. These sugar compositions often carried political subtext. If a figurine of the Pope kneeling before the king sat on the table, the balance of power was understood without a single word. To keep this fragile beauty from collapsing under its own weight and to make it gleam, the masters had to use ingredients we'd today call culinary extremism. The strange ingredients hidden in medieval desserts. The secret ingredients of the era included fish glue from sturgeon bladders and resin from exotic trees, turning the dessert into a kind of plastic. To make sugar sculptures last for weeks, confectioners used tragacanth, a tree resin imported from the East. Mixing it with sugar produced a mass similar to modern fondant, but much harder. Such sweets were often inedible in the conventional sense. You could only lick them or risk breaking your teeth trying to chew them. Another key component was fish glue. It was extracted from the swim bladders of sturgeon to create clear, quivering jellies, the ancestors of modern aspic and marmalade. But the most spectacular trick involved light and metal. Chefs used the Instagram tricks of their time. To make a dish shine, they coated it with gold leaf, and not just for show. According to the medicine of the time, gold was a solar metal that purified the blood and cured melancholy. Feasts featured gilded fruits, gilded roast chickens, and even gold leaf sweets. Guests consumed the precious metal by the gram, believing it made them cleaner on the inside. But while the nobility risked their health for shimmer, ordinary people sought sweetness in what hung from branches, even though physicians considered it a deadly trap. Why medieval people feared fresh fruit. In the Middle Ages, apples and pears were considered extremely dangerous to eat raw. Medicine at the time believed raw fruit caused fevers and putrefaction in the stomach. For medieval people, healthy eating meant thorough cooking. Fruit was almost never eaten fresh. It was baked, boiled in wine, or preserved in honey and sugar. And so, the first confitures appeared. The technique was simple. The fruit was boiled until the sugar displaced all the moisture, turning it into something like stone. This allowed the harvest to be stored for years. Dried fruit was the main sweet for those who couldn't afford sugar sculptures. A special place was held by candied citrus peels. Oranges and lemons were brought from the Mediterranean, and their peels were valued more than the pulp. They were candied in stages until they became transparent. Such candies cost a fortune and served as gifts between monarchs. Interestingly, vegetables were also used. Candied lettuce or carrots in syrup were considered perfectly normal. This was an era when sugar was the universal enhancer for any product meant to add status to the dish. This entire evolution, from forest honey to sugar castles, gave rise to a closed caste of craftsmen whose secrets were worth more than royal decrees. The secret masters of medieval sugar. These men were known as spicers, and they were Europe's first chemists, able to transform syrup into 10 different forms, from soft fondant to transparent sugar glass. By the end of the 15th century, confectionery had become a distinct elite profession. They created what we now know as dragees. Initially, these were anise, coriander, or caraway seeds coated in dozens of layers of sugar glaze. The process was incredibly labor-intensive. The confectioner would rock a copper basin over a fire for days, gradually adding syrup. These little sweets were used as a breath freshener after heavy meat dishes and as a digestive aid. Medieval Europe was obsessed with sweetness far more than we can possibly imagine. For them, dessert wasn't just food. It was a demonstration of power, an alchemy, and a way to cheat the harsh realities of life. Today, buying a chocolate bar at the checkout, we consume more sugar in 5 minutes than a medieval baron did in a lifetime. But with accessibility, we lost that magic of exclusivity for which knights once crossed seas and deserts. If sugar still cost as much as a new iPhone, could you go without it? Rate your love for sweets in the comments, and take care of your teeth. Sugar turned the Middle Ages into a sweet fairy tale for the chosen few. But this luxury depended on almonds. Without them, no marzipan, no great culinary deceptions. If sugar was the king of prestige, almond was the eminence grise, letting chefs deceive even God himself. Why did this nut matter more than meat, and how did it reshape Europe? Watch next to discover the almond's secret.